Supreme Commander Vox'Thul stood on the command deck of the inevitable Dominion, his claws clicking nervously against the polished obsidian of his command console. The massive battleship, pride of Zanthari Imperium's 7th Fleet, hung in the void like a predator waiting to strike. Around him, lesser officers scurried about, their scaled skin reflecting the harsh blue light of the tactical displays. "Status report," Vox'Thul demanded, his 4 eyes narrowing as he gazed at the main view screen. Fleet Captain Dormac approached, bowing low before speaking. "Supreme Commander, we have confirmed visual on the human vessels. They appear to be waiting. Vox'Thul's upper lip curled in disgust. These primitives think they can stall the might of the Zanthari Imperium? How absurd. Show me. The view screen flickered, revealing a small cluster of ships, if one could even call them that. By Zanthari standards, they were primitive, ugly things. Blocky, utilitarian, lacking the elegant curves and intimidating spikes that any proper warship should possess. That is the human defense fleet? Vox'Thul couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "Yes, Supreme Commander," replied Dormac. "We count 17 vessels total. Their largest appears to be roughly 1/8 the size of the inevitable Dominion." Vox'Thul let out a rumbling laugh that startled several junior officers. "And they dare to challenge us? The Imperium has conquered 37 star systems. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. These humans must be even more primitive than our intelligence suggested." Science Officer Pelnara stepped forward, her slender frame trembling slightly in the presence of the Supreme Commander. "Sir, if I may, our intelligence on humans is limited. They were only discovered 7 cycles ago, and have had no formal contact with the Imperium until now." "What's a no?" scoffed Vox'Thul. "Another bipedal species from another backwater planet. I have crushed dozens just like them." "Perhaps," Pelnara continued, her voice soft but insistent, "but there are anomalies in their development path. They achieved faster-than-light travel without mastering unified field theory. They have an unusual relationship with artificial intelligence, and their historical records suggest." "Enough!" Vox'Thul slammed a clawed fist onto his console. "I did not ask for a xenoanthropology lecture, Science Officer. I asked for a status report on an enemy fleet that we will soon obliterate. Palnada buadepoli." "Apologies, Supreme Commander." Admiral Greltalk, Vox'Thul's most trusted advisor, cleared his throat. "Supreme Commander, as per Imperial protocol, we should perhaps attempt communication before engagement. The Emperor would prefer we add willing subjects rather than smoldering ruins to the Imperium." Vox'Thul waved a dismissive hand. "Very well. Open a channel to their flagship, or whatever passes for one in that collection of space junk." "Channel open, Supreme Commander," announced the communications officer to Vox'Thul, straightened his ceremonial armor, and addressed the view screen. "Attention, human vessels. I am Supreme Commander Vox'Thul of the Zanthari Imperium. Your species stands on the precipice of a momentous occasion. Today, you will be incorporated into the greatest empire the galaxy has ever known. Submit now, and you may serve as subjects under our benevolent rule. Resist, and your worlds will burn. You have 1 standard time unit to respond." The screen remained blank for several moments. Then it flickered, and a human face appeared. The creature was pink-skinned, with fur only on the top of its head, black fur streaked with gray. Its mouth was curved upward in what Vox'Thul's cultural briefing had identified as a smile, though he had been told humans use this expression for multiple, often contradictory emotional states. "Hello there," said the human, its voice disturbingly cheerful. "Captain Jack Thompson of the Earth Vessel Relative Perspective. Hope you're having a fantastic day out there in the black." Vox'Thul blinked, confused by the casual tone. "Human, did you understand my transmission? I'm offering you the opportunity to surrender." The human, Captain Thompson, nodded enthusiastically. "Oh, we got it. Loud and clear. Submit or burn, right? Classic opener. You guys must be a hit at parties." A low growl escaped Vox'Thul's throat. "You dare to mock the Zanthari Imperium? Perhaps you do not comprehend the situation you find yourself in. My flagship alone carries enough firepower to reduce your homeworld to ash." "Yeah, about that," Thompson responded, scratching his chin. "We have been getting that a lot lately. 2 weeks ago, it was the Draconian Collective. Before that, the hegemony of Rigel. Everyone wants a piece of Earth these days. We are practically the popular kid at the Galactic High School. Vox'Thul felt his blood pressure rising. The Draconian Collective? The hegemony? What happened when they threatened you? Thompson's smile widened. Oh, they're not threatening anyone anymore. We invited them for tea. Lovely folks once you get past all the kneel before us stuff. The Rigelians make amazing scones, turns out. Admiral Greltalk leaned close to Vox'Thul. Supreme Commander, I'm receiving reports that both the Draconian Collective and the hegemony have withdrawn from several contested systems in the past 60 cycles. We assumed they were consolidating forces for an offensive against us, but silence, hissed Vox'Thul. He turned back to the view screen. Human, your insolence will be your undoing. The Zanthari Imperium is not some minor power to be dismissed. We have turned civilizations far greater than yours to dust. That's impressive, Thompson replied, still infuriatingly calm. Tell me, how's that working out for your empire's economic stability? Must be expensive, all that dust-making. Before Vox'Thul could respond, another human appeared beside Thompson. This one had lighter-colored fur on its head and wore different markings on its uniform. Captain, the new human said, should I tell our friends about the thing? Thompson feigned surprise. Oh, yes, the thing. Almost forgot. Thank you, Commander Wilson. Vox'Thul's patience was wearing dangerously thin. What thing? Speak plainly, human. Well, Thompson began, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. While we have been having this lovely chat, we have been scanning your fleet. Quite impressive, by the way. Love the spikes. Very intimidating. Science Officer Pelnara suddenly gasped. Supreme Commander, we're being scanned. But that's impossible. Our deflection fields should. And Thompson continued, we have noticed your ships use a rather interesting approach to faster-than-light travel. Graviton compression drive, if I'm not mistaken. Clever design. Efficient. Creates those lovely blue contrails that you can see from light years away. Vox'Thul felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. No outsider had ever identified Zanthari drive technology so quickly. How could you possibly know that? Oh, we humans are curious creatures, Thompson replied with a shrug. Always tinkering, always learning. Say, Commander Wilson, what was that paper Professor Nakamura published last month? The one about graviton drive vulnerabilities? Wilson consulted a datapad. I believe it was theoretical exploitations of phase-shifted graviton fields and their applications to non-consensual drive shutdowns, sir. That's the one. Thompson snapped his fingers. Fascinating read. Very technical. Got nominated for a Nobel Prize in physics. Vox'Thul slammed both fists onto his console. Enough of these games. You have not answered my demand, human. Will you surrender to the Imperium? Thompson's smile finally faded, replaced by an expression that even Vox'Thul could recognize as pity. Supreme Commander, let me be clear. We are not going to surrender, but we are also not going to fight you. Then you will die where you stand. Vox'Thul snarled. No, Thompson said simply. We won't, because fighting you would be, well, unsporting, like challenging a child to a mathematical duel, and destroying you would be wasteful. All those resources, all that potential. We don't operate that way. Fleet Captain Dormac approached Vox'Thul again, this time without bowing. His scales had turned a pale shade of green, the Zanthari equivalent of a human going white with shock. Supreme Commander, he whispered, long-range sensors have detected anomalies at the edge of the system. What kind of anomalies? Demanded Vox'Thul. Unknown, sir, but they are massive, and they're moving toward us at speeds our instruments can't properly calculate. Thompson leaned forward on the view screen. Ah, you have noticed our actual fleet arriving. Wonderful. The ships you are looking at here? Just the diplomatic welcome wagon. We'll like to send them out first. Give potential new friends a chance to introduce themselves properly. As if on cue, the view screen split to show a sensor display. Vox'Thul felt his four hearts skip several beats. Hundreds, no, thousands of objects were appearing at the system's edge. Many were larger than his entire fleet combined. Impossible, he breathed. That's humanity's favorite word to prove wrong, Thompson replied. Now, we have two options here. One, you open fire, we demonstrate exactly why that's a bad idea, and your empire becomes a cautionary tale in our history books. Or two, you accept that today is not, in fact, the day the human race joins your empire and we have a civilized conversation about how we might peacefully coexist in this galaxy. Your call, Supreme Commander. Vox'Thul stood frozen, his mind racing. Everything he knew about warfare, about the natural order of species domination, told him to attack, to show strength. Submission was weakness, and weakness was death in the cruel calculus of the Imperium. But something in the human's eyes, something ancient and knowing and utterly unafraid, gave him pause. Supreme Commander, Pelnara said quietly, I have completed analysis of the approaching vessels. Sir, they're unlike anything in our databases. The energy readings alone suggest technology centuries beyond our own, and there are design elements that appear to incorporate principles from a dozen different species. Vox'Thul turned to her. What are you saying, science officer? I'm saying, Pelnara replied, choosing her words carefully, that everything we know about humans may be wrong. They are not primitive. They are not isolated. They have encountered other species before us, learned from them, perhaps even surpassed them. The historical anomalies I mentioned earlier, this could explain them. Admiral Greltalk spoke up. Supreme Commander, I advise caution. The Emperor would not thank us for initiating a war we cannot win. Vox'Thul felt the weight of command press down upon him like never before. His entire life had been built on the certainty of Zanthari superiority, to accept that there might be a species that could challenge them, perhaps even defeat them, was to question everything he believed. Human, he finally said, his voice low and dangerous. You speak of peaceful coexistence, yet you threaten us with your fleet. How is this different from our own approach? Thompson's expression softened. The difference, Supreme Commander, is that we didn't come to your home and demand you kneel. We are defending our space, not conquering yours. And yes, we are showing our strength, because in our experience, that's unfortunately the only language some species initially understand. But our goal isn't your destruction or subjugation. It's conversation. As Thompson spoke, one of the massive human vessels came into visual range. It dwarfed the inevitable Dominion like a mountain beside a hill. Yet despite its size, it moved with a grace that seemed to defy physics. Its hull was smooth, elegant, unmarred by the weapons and placements that studded Zanthari ships. That, Thompson said, noticing Vox'Thul's gaze, is the UESS diplomatic solution. Ironic name, I know. Admiral Patel would love to invite you aboard for dinner. She makes an excellent curry, though we will have to check if your species can safely consume it first. Before Vox'Thul could respond, alarms began blaring across the command deck. Supreme Commander, shouted the weapons officer. Our primary targeting systems are offline. Secondary systems failing. We have lost weapons control. Similar reports began flooding in from other ships in the fleet. Not just weapons, but propulsion systems, shields, communications, all mysteriously failing or operating at minimal capacity. Thompson sighed. Sorry about that. Just a precaution. Professor Nakamura's theories in action. Don't worry. Life support and artificial gravity are untouched. We are not monsters. Vox'Thul slumped back into his command chair, defeat washing over him. So this is how it ends. The great Zanthari Imperium neutralized without a single shot fired. On the contrary, Thompson replied, his tone genuinely sympathetic. This is how something new begins. The Zanthari Imperium has a choice now. Continue down a path of conquest until you meet someone who won't be as diplomatic as we are. Or join us in building something greater than either of our civilizations could achieve alone. Vox'Thul looked around at his command crew, at the fear in their eyes, yes, but also at the glimmer of something else. Curiosity, wonder, perhaps even hope. What exactly are you proposing, human? He asked quietly. Thompson smiled again, but this time there was no mockery in it. That, Supreme Commander Vox'Thul, is precisely the right question, and it's one I think we should discuss face to face. With all systems restored to your fleet, of course, as a show of good faith. As if on cue, the alarm silenced. The tactical displays returned to normal. The weapons officer reported control restored to all systems. You would trust us with our weapons? Vox'Thul asked, genuinely surprised. Trust has to start somewhere, Thompson replied. Besides, we have made our point, and I'm betting you are smart enough to see the bigger picture here. For the first time in his life, Supreme Commander Vox'Thul of the Zanthari Imperium found himself at a complete loss. Everything he knew about warfare, about diplomacy, about the very nature of species interaction told him the situation was impossible. Yet here they were. "Very well, Captain Thompson," he finally said. "I will meet with your Admiral Patel. But know this, I do so only to better understand the unusual circumstances we find ourselves in. This is not surrender." Thompson's smile widened. "Of course not. Just a conversation between equals. That's all humanity has ever wanted." He paused, then added with a wink, "Well, that and good coffee. But one step at a time, right?" As the transmission ended, Vox'Thul gazed out at the vast human fleet now surrounding his own. For the first time in his military career, he felt something entirely unfamiliar. IT wasn't fear, exactly. Nor was it hope. IT was the unsettling sensation that everything he thought he knew about the universe had just been turned upside down. And somewhere, deep in the recesses of his four-chambered heart, he wondered if perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing after all. I will continue with part 2 of the HFY Sci-Fi story and make sure it's a compelling conclusion without any repetition. The diplomatic shuttle departed from the inevitable Dominion with Supreme Commander Vox'Thul and a small contingent of his highest-ranking officers. Through the viewport, he watched his mighty warship shrink against the backdrop of the human vessel Diplomatic Solution, a name that seemed more ironic with each passing moment. "This is madness," muttered Admiral Greltalk beside him, walking unarmed into the den of our enemy. "Are they our enemy?" Pelnara asked quietly. "They disabled our entire fleet without firing a shot, then immediately restored our systems. That's not the behavior of a species intent on conquest." Vox'Thul remained silent, his four eyes fixed on the approaching human ship. As they drew closer, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. It wasn't just large, it was colossal, with a design philosophy unlike anything in Zanthari architecture. Where Imperium ships were all hard angles and intimidating protrusions, this human craft flowed like water frozen in mid-current, its hull seamlessly integrating what appeared to be gardens and transparent observation decks. "No visible weapons emplacements," noted Dormac, who had insisted on joining the delegation despite his obvious terror. "Either they're concealed, or they don't need them," finished Vox'Thul grimly. The shuttle glided into a cavernous docking bay where dozens of other vessels were arranged with mathematical precision. Vox'Thul noted with unease that many appeared to be diplomatic craft from other starfaring civilizations, including several the Imperium had classified as potential conquest targets. A welcoming party awaited them as they disembarked. Captain Thompson stood at the forefront, flanked by a diverse group of humans in various uniforms. Behind them stood representatives of at least 6 non-human species, some of which even Vox'Thul couldn't identify. "Supreme Commander," Thompson called out cheerfully, "welcome aboard the Diplomatic Solution. Allow me to introduce Admiral Prisha Patel, commanding officer of this vessel and senior representative of the United Earthspace Command for this sector." A human female with dark skin and silver-streaked black hair stepped forward. Unlike Thompson's casual demeanor, she carried herself with the unmistakable authority of a veteran warrior. "Supreme Commander Vox'Thul," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite its low volume. "Thank you for accepting our invitation. I understand the situation is unconventional for you." Vox'Thul drew himself up to his full height, nearly 2 heads taller than the tallest human present. "Admiral Patel, I come representing the might and majesty of the Zanthari Imperium. While current circumstances have led to this meeting, do not mistake my presence for submission." Admiral Patel's mouth twitched slightly. "Of course not. This is merely a conversation between powers. Perhaps the first of many." She gestured toward a corridor leading deeper into the ship. "If you and your officers would follow me, we have prepared a suitable venue for our discussions." As they walked, Vox'Thul took careful note of their surroundings. The interior of the Diplomatic Solution was as unexpected as its exterior. Instead of the sterile, utilitarian environment typical of military vessels, the corridors were wide and well lit, with living plants growing along the walls. Crew members, human and otherwise, moved purposefully about their duties, offering respectful nods to the Zanthari delegation, but displaying none of the fear or deference Vox'Thul was accustomed to receiving. "Your ship is unlike our warships," he observed carefully. The diplomatic solution isn't strictly a warship, Admiral Patel replied. She's classified as a first contact and cultural exchange vessel, though she carries defensive capabilities. Defensive capabilities sufficient to neutralize an entire battle fleet, Vox'Thul noted dryly. Admiral Patel shrugged. We have found that the ability to end conflicts quickly tends to prevent them from starting in the first place. They arrived at a large circular chamber with an equally circular table at its center. The room's ceiling was transparent, offering a breathtaking view of the stars above and the assembled fleets below. Around the table sat representatives from various species, all of whom rose respectfully as the Zanthari delegation entered. Allow me to introduce the current members of the Galactic Cooperative, Admiral Patel said, gesturing to the assembled delegates. Representatives from the Arcturian Alliance, the Proxima Confederacy, the Free Worlds of Tau Ceti, the Rigelian Commonwealth, the Draconian Assembly, and several others. Vox'Thul nearly stumbled in shock. The Draconians? The Rigelians? But they were once expansionist empires much like your own, completed a tall, reptilian being that Vox'Thul recognized as Draconian. Indeed we were, Supreme Commander, till we encountered humanity and learned there are more profitable paths than conquest. Profitable, scoffed Admiral Greltok. What profit is there in surrender? A Rigelian delegate, short, with iridescent blue skin, let out a musical laugh. Who said anything about surrender? Our sovereignty remains intact. Our cultures thrive. But now we trade technologies instead of weapons fire, share knowledge instead of threats. Please be seated. Admiral Patel gestured to several empty chairs clearly designed to accommodate Zanthari physiology. We have much to discuss. Vox'Thul sat reluctantly, his officers following suit. I find it difficult to believe that proud warrior races would so willingly join this cooperative. Pride, said Captain Thompson, taking a seat beside Admiral Patel, is a luxury best enjoyed by those who survive. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. How so? Asked Pelnara, speaking up for the first time since they'd boarded. Admiral Patel nodded to Thompson, who leaned forward. For most of our history, humans fought each other. Constantly. Over resources, territory, ideology, you name it, we have killed each other over it. We nearly wiped ourselves out several times. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, climate collapse, the usual stupid mistakes of an adolescent species. Yet here you are, Vox'Thul observed. Here we are, Thompson agreed. Because eventually we realized something profound. Cooperation is more efficient than competition. Diversity of thought leads to better solutions than enforced conformity. And there's more than enough universe out there for everyone. Admiral Patel tapped a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared above its center. Supreme Commander, this is a map of known space within 5,000 light-years of Earth. The blue regions represent cooperative member territories. The red represents the current borders of the Zanthari Imperium. Vox'Thul stared at the display. The red region, his mighty imperium that had seemed so vast and unstoppable, was a tiny island in an ocean of blue. This is impossible, he whispered. Our intelligence reports were incomplete, Admiral Patel finished gently. Deliberately so. We have been aware of the Zanthari Imperium for nearly 30 Earth years. We have observed your expansion, your conquests, your technological development. And we decided to let you come to us, rather than the other way around. Why? Demanded Vox'Thul. If you possess such overwhelming force, why not simply conquer us as we would have conquered you? A sad smile crossed Admiral Patel's face. Because that's not who we choose to be anymore. Conquest is easy, Supreme Commander. Cooperation is harder, but infinitely more rewarding in the long term. What exactly are you proposing? Vox'Thul asked, his voice carefully controlled despite the turmoil in his mind. Admiral Patel nodded to an aide, who distributed data tablets to the Zanthari delegation. These contain our standard membership proposal for the Galactic Cooperative. In essence, you maintain sovereignty over your existing territories, with the exception of any conquered worlds where the native populations desire independence, which would be determined by free elections. Ridiculous, spirited Greltok. Many of our subject worlds are barely civilized. They cannot be trusted to govern themselves. The draconian representative hissed softly. We once thought the same of our conquered worlds. We were wrong. Many have become our most valuable trading partners. Some even became our teachers in unexpected ways. Admiral Patel continued, as if there had been no interruption. In exchange for respecting the autonomy of sentient species, you gain access to cooperative trade networks, technological exchanges, cultural programs, and mutual defense agreements. The economic benefits alone would triple your Imperium's GDP within 5 standard years, based on our projections. Vox'Thul scrolled through the proposal, his tactical mind already analyzing the implications. And if we refuse? The room fell silent. Admiral Patel met his gaze steadily. Then you remain as you are. The cooperative would establish clear boundaries around your territory and enforce them. You would be contained, not destroyed. We don't believe in unnecessary bloodshed. Containment would be a death sentence, Dormac protested. The Imperium requires expansion to sustain itself. That, said Thompson gently, is precisely the problem with building an economy on conquest, isn't it? Sooner or later, you run out of victims, or you encounter someone bigger than you. Either way, the model fails. Vox'Thul set down the tablet. You realize what you are asking? Thousands of cycles of Zanthari tradition speak against this. Our entire culture is built on the principle of strength through dominance. And yet, observed Pelnara, here we sit, in the heart of a vessel that could destroy our entire fleet, being offered partnership rather than servitude. She turned to her commander. Perhaps there is strength in their approach that we have overlooked. A human woman who had been silent until now spoke up. She was older than the others, with completely white hair and eyes that seemed to contain the wisdom of centuries. Supreme Commander, if I may, I am Dr. Amara Jackson, xenoanthropologist. I have spent my career studying how species adapt their cultural paradigms when confronted with fundamental challenges to their worldview. Vox'Thul gestured for her to continue. The Zanthari are not the first proud warrior culture we have encountered, Dr. Jackson explained. The Draconians, as mentioned, had a similar ethos. So did the Proxima Confederacy. Both have found ways to preserve their martial traditions while redirecting them away from conquest. How? Asked Vox'Thul, genuinely curious despite himself. The Draconians have become the cooperative's premier security force, the reptilian delegate explained. Our warriors now protect trade routes and respond to natural disasters across multiple systems. They are honored for lives saved rather than enemies slain. And my people, added a tall, silver-skinned Proximan, channel our competitive drive into technological innovation and athletic competitions rather than warfare. Our battle engineers are celebrated throughout cooperative space for their ingenuity in solving impossible problems. Vox'Thul fell silent, contemplating. Everything these aliens said violated the foundational principles of Zanthari society. And yet, had those principles truly served his people well? The Imperium existed in a constant state of war, consuming vast resources to maintain its military machine, always seeking new worlds to conquer, to feed the cycle. What of the Emperor? He finally asked. His divine right to rule is absolute in our culture. Admiral Patel nodded. Internal governance remains your affair, provided it meets certain basic standards of sentient rights. Many cooperative members retained their traditional leadership structures. Some even maintain designated warrior castes. What changes is how those institutions interact with other worlds. I require time to consider this proposal, Vox'Thul announced, rising from his seat. And I must consult with the Imperial Council. Of course, Admiral Patel agreed, standing as well. But before you return to your vessel, perhaps you would accept a tour of the diplomatic solution? I believe it might help contextualize our discussion. Vox'Thul hesitated, then nodded curtly. Very well. What followed was unlike anything the Supreme Commander had experienced in his long military career. Admiral Patel and Captain Thompson led the Zanthari delegation through sections of the vessel that defied conventional classification. They visited vast hydroponics bays where food was grown for hundreds of different species. Research laboratories where scientists from dozens of worlds collaborated on projects ranging from medical innovation to theoretical physics. A massive library containing the combined knowledge of over 30 civilizations. Most surprising were the military sections. The ship's defensive systems, once finally revealed, were staggering in their sophistication. But equally impressive was the philosophy behind them. Every weapon we design has one primary purpose, explained Admiral Patel as they observed a demonstration of a device that could selectively disable enemy systems without harming crew members, to end conflicts with minimal loss of life on either side. "You fight to spare your enemies?" asked Dormac incredulously. "We fight to create future allies," corrected Thompson. "Dead enemies tell no tales, share no knowledge, build no future together." The tour culminated in a vast central garden where members of dozens of species mingled freely. Children of various races played together, while adults engaged in everything from scientific discussions to what appeared to be poetry competitions. Pelnara gazed around in wonder. "This is not what I expected." "Few expect this," Admiral Patel acknowledged. "The universe teaches harsh lessons. It's easy to assume that advanced civilizations must be conquerors, that technological superiority inevitably leads to dominance. Humanity nearly fell into that trap ourselves. But we had the good fortune to encounter teachers rather than tyrants when we first ventured beyond our solar system." The Arcturians Vox'Thul guessed, recalling the ancient species mentioned earlier. Admiral Patel nodded. "They could have crushed us like insects. Instead, they shared their knowledge, helped us overcome our self-destructive tendencies. Now, we try to pay that forward." As they returned to the shuttle bay, Vox'Thul found himself struggling with emotions he had rarely experienced. Doubt, hope, possibility. "Supreme Commander," Admiral Patel said as they prepared to depart, "I understand this is not an easy decision. But consider this. Throughout galactic history, expansionist empires have eventually followed one of two paths. They either encounter a force greater than themselves and are destroyed, or they evolve beyond the need for conquest. The Zanthari need not follow the first path." "I will consider your words," Vox'Thul replied stiffly. "That's all we ask," Thompson said with a smile. "Oh, and one more thing before you go." He handed Vox'Thul a small container. "Coffee beans, grown on Earth. Makes a fantastic beverage. Thought you might enjoy trying it." Vox'Thul accepted the gift with bemused confusion before boarding his shuttle. The journey back to the inevitable Dominion was conducted in contemplative silence. Each of the Zanthari officers was lost in their own thoughts, processing what they had witnessed. Only when they had docked and returned to the security of the Supreme Commander's private war room did they speak freely. "It must be a deception," Greltok insisted. "No civilization achieves such power without conquest, without dominance." "Yet we saw it with our own eyes," Pelnara countered. "Not just humans, but dozens of species coexisting, collaborating. And their technology beyond anything in our archives." Dormac paced nervously. "The Emperor will never accept these terms. To acknowledge equals? To relinquish conquered worlds? It goes against everything the Imperium stands for." "Does it?" Vox'Thul asked quietly. All eyes turned to him in surprise. "What does our history actually tell us?" Before the rise of Emperor Zolvax the Conqueror, the Zanthari were known as explorers, astronomers, philosophers. The Imperium, as we know, it has existed for barely 2,000 cycles, a fraction of our species' history. "Supreme Commander," Greltok said carefully, "surely you're not suggesting we accept their offer? To do so would be to admit weakness. Would it?" Vox'Thul challenged. "Or would it demonstrate the strength to recognize a changing galaxy and adapt accordingly? What is the primary duty of any military commander, Admiral?" Greltok straightened. "To secure victory for the Imperium. No, is to ensure the survival and prosperity of our people. Victory is merely one path to that end. Sometimes, the greater victory lies in knowing when not to fight." He moved to the view screen, gazing out at the massive human vessels still surrounding his fleet. "We came here expecting to add another primitive world to our collection. Instead, we have discovered that we are the primitives, a minor power on the edges of a vast cooperative of species more advanced than our intelligence ever suspected." Turning back to his officers, Vox'Thul's expression was resolute. "I will not lead the Zanthari to destruction through pride, nor will I surrender our sovereignty. But I will advocate that the Emperor consider this proposal seriously. The galaxy is clearly not what we thought it was. Our strategies must adapt accordingly. And if the Emperor refuses? Asked Pelnin. A dangerous light entered Vox'Thul's 4 eyes. Then I shall remind His Imperial Majesty that even emperors can be replaced when the survival of our species is at stake. 3 cycles later, the Zanthari delegation returned to the diplomatic solution with a counterproposal. 6 cycles after that, following intense negotiations and several demonstrations of human technology that left the Zanthari representatives speechless, the preliminary articles of Zanthari admission to the Galactic Cooperative were signed. It would take years to fully implement the agreement. Some Zanthari colonies resisted the changes violently. Several conquered worlds chose independence when given the option. The imperial economy struggled to transition from war footing to cooperative trade. But slowly, inevitably, the Zanthari Imperium transformed. Military academies began teaching strategic cooperation alongside tactical warfare. Warriors found new purpose in exploration, disaster response, and yes, occasionally in justified defensive actions against the few remaining aggressive powers in the galaxy. 5 years after that fateful first encounter, Supreme Commander Vox'Thul, now Ambassador Vox'Thul, stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Zanthari diplomatic vessel Paradigm Shift, watching the stars streak by as they traveled to Earth for a major cooperative summit. Captain Thompson, now his frequent collaborator and, strange as it seemed, his friend, stood beside him. Did you know? Vox'Thul asked suddenly. That day, when we first met, did you know it would end like this? Thompson laughed. End? My friend, this is just the beginning. He sipped from a mug of the bitter earth beverage called coffee, which Vox'Thul had developed an unfortunate addiction to. But to answer your question, no, we hoped, but we didn't know. Humans may seem godlike to some species, but we are still learning too. Every first contact is a leap of faith. Faith, mused Vox'Thul. An unusual concept for warriors. Not really, Thompson replied. Every soldier who follows orders has faith in their commander. Every commander who leads troops has faith in their training. We have just expanded the circle of who we place our faith in. Vox'Thul contemplated this as he sipped his own coffee. Do you know what puzzles me most about humans, even after all this time? What's that? Your laughter, Vox'Thul said. That first day, when I threatened to destroy your world, you laughed. When faced with an enemy fleet, you made jokes. It was disconcerting. Thompson grinned. Well, that's one of humanity's greatest weapons and gifts. Humor. The ability to laugh in the face of fear. To find joy even in dangerous situations. It's kept us sane through our darkest hours. I'm beginning to understand it, Vox'Thul admitted. Last week, during the trade negotiations with the Proximan delegation, I actually made a joke. The translator almost malfunctioned from confusion. Thompson burst out laughing. See? You're practically human already. Now you go too far, Vox'Thul growled, but his upper lip curled in the Zanthari approximation of a smile. Beyond the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the tiny vessels that traveled between them. But within those vessels, something miraculous was happening. Species that might have destroyed each other were instead learning from each other, growing together, building something greater than their separate histories could have imagined. And occasionally, when the universe presented its inevitable challenges, they faced them not with fear or domination, but with determination, cooperation, and sometimes, just sometimes, with laughter. After all, as humans had taught the galaxy, there were far better ways to respond to the vastness of space than conquest. There was discovery. There was friendship. There was the simple joy of sharing a cup of coffee with a being who once would have been your enemy, but now stood beside you as an ally beneath the infinite stars.